All kinds of creatures have been clinging to me my whole life. Stray cats, dogs, and since recently, also homeless people. You'd better attract normal men, my mom says. However, normal men haven't noticed me since high school for some reason, although it all depends on who one considers to be normal. Like, for example, Mr. Frank is a homeless man. He was sweet, and I believe more normal than most normal people. I say he was, because he was found dead the other day, strung up by his own belt in one of the rooms at my workplace. The police said it was suicide, but I didn't believe that Mr. Frank would let me down like that. We met like a month ago. There was a real storm outside that day. Outside the window of our small dry cleaners where I work as a receptionist, cleaner, and laundress, trash, branches, and even slate-blown-off roofs were flying. Amid that severe storm, I noticed a hunched elderly man with a shaggy, dirty white dog. I invited them inside to wait out the storm. Mr. Frank was not a typical stray. He did not take alcohol, drugs, or smoke. He wore an old silver ring that fitted on his finger too loosely and seemed about to get lost. One day I looked at the jewelry up close. It had a strange engraving of 13 numbers on the inside. I asked him what they stood for, but Mr. Frank only shrugged his shoulders. He started coming over regularly. I gave food to both him and the dog, and he entertained me with small talk. One day I asked him why he had chosen this kind of life. "I don't remember," he said. "I only know myself like this." Where he came from and how he ended up here was also a question without an answer. Mr. Frank remembered, however, that he had a daughter. He wanted to meet her. He was hoping to meet her by chance and was sure he would recognize her. Who knows if it was true or the fantasies of a lonely homeless guy, but I did feel pity for him. On the eve of the tragedy, Mr. Frank came over excited, cheerful even. He said he needed clean clothes and asked me to borrow some. "Going on a date?" I joked. "Maybe," Mr. Frank replied, smiling mysteriously. Of course, I shouldn't have done that, but I still handed him a nice suit and a customer's shirt. This was the outfit in which our courier Tom found Mr. Frank the next morning. When I got to work there, besides Tom and the police, Stella, the owner of the dry cleaners, and Harry, our accountant, were already there. "You'll be reimbursing the client's suit with your own money," Stella hissed. I slipped into the back room where Mr. Frank was found. It had a separate entrance from the outside. It was the place where I stored all kinds of junk, production waste, and the tools I used to clean the place every morning. They've already taken the poor guy's body, but they seem to have forgotten his dog. Who cares about him now, though? The shaggy one timidly crawled out from behind the trash cans. Suddenly, an investigator appeared in the doorway, and I felt a flush rise up my cheeks. It was Christopher, my classmate and my first love. That's right, the same brunette whose kiss I'd been dreaming about since I was 12. I was glad to know that he was the one in charge of the case. However, Christopher said there would be no investigation. It's a suicide, which is not an uncommon thing among homeless people. But I knew there had been a murder. Mr. Frank couldn't have dressed up just to leave this life looking pretty. Meanwhile, Christopher handed me his business card and left. The dog distracted me from thinking about my classmate. It pushed the trash can and almost knocked it over. I glanced inside and saw money in there. Quite a few thick wads bound with yellow rubber bands. Where did this come from? Mr. Frank's ring was behind the can. He lost it in the end. Then I heard footsteps outside. I closed the trash can and clenched the ring tightly in my fist. Harry entered the back room, waddling for some reason. The dog growled. The accountant swung around and would have hit it, but all of a sudden, he started sneezing, stubbing his nose in his right palm. He grabbed a bag from the dumpster with his left and walked away, ordering me to get rid of the dog. I pretended I was catching the dog, while I kept my eye on Harry. He made it look like he wanted to throw out the trash, but he actually carried the bag to the office, so he knew there was money in the can. But how? I put the ring in my purse and looked around the back room again. There was a small red piece of trash on the dark floor. I took a closer look. It was a broken nail covered with red nail polish. This is the kind of manicure Stella loves. I wonder if all her nails are intact. As soon as I stood at the reception desk, Stella handed me a bag of her clothes. It was enough to notice that one of her nails was broken. She ordered with a gesture to take care of her things and walked off to her office. I unwrapped the package. There was the black dress Stella wore yesterday. The dress was thickly covered with off-white dog hair. Wow. This means she'd been around Mr. Frank's dog yesterday, and thus Mr. Frank himself. What a twist. So it was Stella who murdered the stray guy? For what reason? I shook the dress carelessly, and particles of fur scattered the room. A loud sneeze came from Harry, who waddled past me. Oh, so he's allergic to dog hair. Following Harry was Tom, who was probably allergic to me. How else do you explain him always avoiding me? I blocked his way and asked him what he was looking for in the back room. Why did he go there this morning? For the first time, Tom looked me straight in the eye. I didn't murder him, if that's what you're implying, he said seriously. The day before, he caught Stella and Harry talking. They didn't like me helping Mr. Frank, saying he was ruining the dry cleaner's reputation. Tom was worried I'd lose my job, and he'd been looking for me this morning to warn me. He blushed deeply. Oh my gosh. Does that mean he likes me? The next day, Stella asked me to bring her clean dress to her place. I closed the dry cleaners for lunch, hopped into Tom's car, and sped to her place. Alice, her teenage daughter, opened the door to meet me. The girl had pretty long blonde hair. I handed over her mother's clothes and asked her to use their bathroom. Alice walked me down the hallway past a few rooms. One of the rooms' door was open, and I noticed a bunch of framed photos on the mantel. That's what I need. As soon as I got the chance, I snuck into this room. A picture of a young Stella holding an infant in her arms and a man's hand on her shoulder caught my attention. The image of the man himself was probably cropped off. However, the fragment that was left was enough for me to get a knot in my stomach. There was Mr. Frank's ring on the finger. I tucked the picture into my purse and raced back into the bathroom. I got a crazy idea. I grabbed a comb with a few of Alice's long blonde hairs on the tines and shoved them into my purse too. An hour later, I was sitting in a cafe telling Christopher the results of my investigation. Chris was listening attentively, staring at the photo, and when I handed him the girl's hair, he even applauded. He later informed me that according to DNA testing, Mr. Frank is Alice's father, so he's also Stella's ex-husband. Except his name isn't Frank, it's Philip. The couple had a bitter divorce a decade ago. Stella tried to take over the business, the most successful dry cleaning chain in town at the time. The court, however, sided with the husband, obliging him to provide his wife and daughter with a livelihood. Therefore, the chain of dry cleaners belonged to Philip, but under the agreement, Stella received all the profits of one of them, the one she worked in. The woman got arrested. Christopher let me observe the interrogation from a secret room. My boss told me that the night the man died, she spilled coffee in her office and went to the back room looking for a mop. When she looked back, she found Mr. Frank coming in after her. She was about to kick the tramp away when suddenly she heard, "Stella, is that you? I have something to tell you." The woman looked closer and was stunned. It was her ex-husband. It was hard to recognize him now. He looked gaunt and skinny. The last time Stella saw him was when he was rushing to catch a plane to Goa after their divorce. He decided to live there for a while. He ran the business remotely. Harry executed his orders and transferred almost all the money. That's why the business went belly up, from what Harry said. Only one dry cleaner left out of 10. There was nothing left to transfer. No wonder Philip ended up homeless. He begged to see his daughter, while Stella couldn't imagine telling the girl that her father was homeless. Philip kept talking, telling her that something had happened to him on the way to the airport. His papers had disappeared, and he had forgotten who he was and where he came from. From time to time, he remembered little details, and that's how he found himself here. But he always remembered his daughter. And now he wants to talk to her as he has a short time left. He is dying of cancer. That's what they told him after he was examined at a homeless care center. Stella offered him money, but Philip threw them in the trash and kept insisting on meeting his daughter. This kind of behavior frightened the woman, so she fled, breaking a fingernail on the door, didn't even lock the back room. When I got back to work, there was a stray animal transport van parked outside the dry cleaners, and the service guys were dragging our shaggy dog inside it. I tried to guess the combination, but no luck, and then I remembered the ring. Could the digits on it be a code? The other day, it bit a man who was hospitalized for examination. I asked to see the permit for catching the dog. The victim's name was written there. It was Harry, along with the date of the incident, which coincided with the day of the murder. That's why he was limping. I called Christopher and asked him to come over and told him all about Harry. I also pointed out that in case the accountant is the murderer, there could be Harry's nasal secretions or saliva on the victim's body. Chris joked that he was ready to have me as a partner, and he stepped aside to contact a medical examiner. Tom and I walked over to the accountant's office. The only thing we found of interest was a safe. But what's the code? Except they had a different brand name and belonged to an accountant. Philip's missing paperwork was here too. I dialed them quickly. It's unbelievable, but the safe is unlocked. Money wasn't what we were interested in. A pile of documents interested us much more. We found a power of attorney to run a laundry chain in Harry's name. Among the papers were also found documents for several other successfully operating dry cleaners of the chain, except they had a different brand name and belonged to an accountant. Philip's missing paperwork was here too. Suddenly, I felt something pressed into the back of my head, goosebumps running down my back in terror. I turned around slowly. Harry was standing behind me, the gun in his hand pointed straight at my face. Tom gently pulled me away and shielded me with himself. A gunshot sounded. Harry fell down onto the floor, and I saw Christopher holstering his gun. Well, it's kind of nice to be rescued by two wonderful men, I can tell. I should totally have an affair with at least one of them. Chris reported that they did find remnants of foreign secretions on Philip's body. The accountant survived and later admitted that he was always jealous of Philip, who had been his friend since childhood. A gorgeous wife, a thriving business. Harry would do anything to get that. He seduced Stella, hoping she'd take over the business after the divorce, but it didn't work. That's when he plotted the murder. That day he drove Philip to the airport. Harry attacked him in the car, then hid the body and took the wallet and papers. Then he took out a power of attorney and ran the business as he saw fit, telling lies to Stella about Philip's profligacy and the company's bankruptcy. That unfortunate evening, Harry noticed that money was missing from the safe. Only Stella knew the code, but she never took money without telling him. He followed her and got shocked when he saw Philip. It was a good thing Philip hadn't remembered who had attacked him 10 years ago. However, it was better to act on the front end. When Stella left, the accountant attacked Philip for the second time and hanged him in the back room. The dog tried to save the owner and bit the attacker badly. The next day, by the way, I took the dog home. As for this story, everything is clear to me except one thing. Why are people concerned about the purity of their belongings more than the purity of their souls? It's easy to get stains out of clothes. But your stained conscience can't be cleaned by any dry cleaner.
Crime Crackers.